Hey, welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Put on Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. Beautiful day out here, right? 60 degrees. You gotta love all that. Our TPOW podcast is my Twitter handle, and RHOLM 22 is James is Ryan's. We have a guest on our show today. One half of the Unfiltered Truth podcast, Phil Robinson III. Hopefully, we'll get Phil Jones in here somewhere. When he'll sneak in here somehow. Maybe we could thaw him out from the East Coast. How's everything doing for you guys today?
It's good over here. We disappointed into the game on Saturday, but a lot is happening in the world of the Raiders. A lot of things going on behind the scenes. I've been monitoring the end of season press conferences. I watched Rich's speech. I've watched a lot of the players that have spoken, and trying to get a gauge of how everybody's feeling going in. And uncertainty seems to be the phrase of the day.
Yeah, as far as that goes. Ryan, what do you think about today? I thought it was interesting that he did not wear any Raiders gear, Rich Bisaccia, when he was in the press conference today.
Yeah, I was actually out of the house from like 12 to 3, and then I got the text from you that he wasn't wearing Raiders gear. My ears perked up, and then before I know it, I jump on Twitter, and there's the news that Mayock was relieved of his duties. They've been requesting interviews, GMs, a couple GM candidates, coaching candidate, and Jared Mayo. So it's definitely a day. I figured it was going to be tomorrow. It came a little early that they broke the news this afternoon, but this is the direction that it always was going to go. I think Bisaccia did what he could as a placeholder, but we've all anticipated. And I know that we've been talking about on our podcast that we didn't think Mayock was going to survive either, and that seems to be the case.
Yeah, and then we can go back and forth about whose issue it is, whether it was Gruden or Mayock. It doesn't matter. You can't once Gruden left, it was just time to move on. As far as that goes, the season in review now. What are the biggest parts of the season that we take from it? The Raiders did make the playoffs, 10-7, won on that last game of the year at home, and then lost to the Bengals. Phil, I'll have you go first. What are your when somebody says to you, what are your thoughts about this season? What comes to your mind?
Success. The Raiders have been on a path of success since John Gruden got here, and it's easy to point to all of his abject failures and say about what a horrible coach he was, but I can look at the bigger picture. John Gruden came in on a full rebuild, and he got rid of some of our favorite players. He got rid of Mack, he got rid of Cooper, turned them into draft picks. Some of those draft picks hit, a lot of them didn't, which is why what ultimately cost Mike Mayock his job. But in year 4 of Gruden's rebuild, the Raiders made the playoffs. They continued improving their record. There was a 2-game improvement from last season. Ooh, I'm having problems talking. And they looked a lot better in certain aspects of their team. They looked like a team that was ready to start making that step. And as good as they were, I got to believe that if they had kept their originals, if Ruggs was able to finish the season, they probably would have been that much better. A lot, like I said, through all of the adversity that they went through, through everything that would make you feel like the Raiders were just going to fold up, take their balls, go home, and just suck for the rest of the season. They fought through it. They pushed through it. They picked each other up. Somehow all of the cancers from this team were removed, and the guys that remained were able to gel together and get together and make a run. And they did it in the most improbable fashion. They did it in a way that a lot of people don't even fully want to recognize. They made the playoffs off defense and a run game. Everybody will tell you it was Carr, and they couldn't have did it without Carr. And I'll be here to tell you the unfiltered, honest truth. They did it in spite of Carr. On the field, you could have switched Carr out with any number of quarterbacks who are going to give you 1 touchdown and 2 turnovers, and they still got those W's when they needed to get them.
Ryan,
yeah, I think I would add, clearly success, as you mentioned. I think playoffs is the first thing that came to mind. This team made the playoffs. That's something they've done one time in the last 19 years going into the season. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is we've heard a lot about the term foundational pieces, and they were supposed to be those first round picks. The Raiders established foundational pieces this year. It just wasn't the ones we thought they were going to be. It's Max Crosby, it's Hunter Renfrow, it's Daniel Carlson, it's AJ Cole. Those two special team guys, they got all pro. We have a first team all pro punter. We have a second team all pro kicker. We can talk about special teams all we want, but I think moving forward, those are guys they can count on. And clearly the development of Max Crosby and Hunter Renfrow were the two biggest things. And then if you want to look further down the road, I think Trayvon Merrick showed a lot. He played the most snaps of any player in the NFL this year, and he's only going to get better. And now it's who's going to be the next wave, because they need more. They don't have enough talent on this team right now, but this team was more talented, and this is what the vision was as far as adding those first-round picks. They didn't hit on them, but there are foundational pieces now on this roster, and that's the first time we can say that since probably 2015.
Yeah,
2016.
The young names, we all know them very well, and I do think that we talked about on our podcast, and you mentioned it, Ryan, that the timelines are a little screwed up now, because usually when you make this playoff run, it's with your quarterback in the second year, third year, and then you still can add pieces because the quarterback is not making huge money. Derek is somehow, some way, he's probably not going to play on that $19 million with no guarantee money coming forward. I don't think so. I don't think his agent would advise him to do so. So we'll have to see about that. But for me, like I said, this is a team that, like, I think, perseverance and then playoffs as well, like you said, that's really what this team did. They really, when they lost to Kansas City, obviously the hope was lost and gone, but they were able to, you can say what you want about Cleveland. Maybe it was the Cleveland win in the COVID game, whatever, but the Colt game was the game where I said, okay, I started to believe, because that's when, everybody, they had their full allotment of players. The COVID thing just switched from the CDC. So they were going to have Wentz, they were going to have Leonard, they were going to have all these players. And, they were able to went there, they were able to go to Indianapolis, and they were a far better team on that day. The game really, wasn't for a Madden touchdown with the tip at the end. They probably kind of go away and win that game pretty easily.
No, definitely. I think you're right. And I think they controlled most of that game. This team was close. They won 10 games. A lot of it is not sustainable in the long run, how they were winning them. Mm-hmm. But if they clean up the red zone, which has been an issue, let's be honest, it's been an issue for 7 years. I know the Raiders were number one in Carr's rookie year, but they also had the fewest amount of attempts. So people don't want to tell you that. So it's a lot easier to be successful when you're doing it the fewest amount of times in the league. But and if they're somewhere, 12th, 13th in red zone instead of 27th, 28th, this team might win 12 or 13 games. And now we're talking about the number one seed. Now we're talking about number two seed, home games. And the way this team plays on the road, they have to figure out how to do that at home. They can't lay eggs in that stadium. You're going to go on the road in this league and win 5 out of 8 games. There's no excuse not to win 11, 12 games. Because you should be winning, especially in 9 home games. You should be winning 6 or 7 of them, not fighting to scrape to get to 4 or 5. So they're headed in the right direction. But I think they do need, and then obviously Mark Davis agrees, they do need to make some changes at the higher levels of the organization to push this thing forward, because the AFC is not getting any easier. There's a lot of young quarterbacks that are very good in that conference that the Raiders are going to have to battle, whether that's Mahomes, Herbert, Burrow, Allen, Lamar Jackson. That's 5 right there. They're all young and still on basically rookie contracts other than Mahomes. So the Raiders really need to figure out how to add a couple of more pieces to this roster and get the right coaching staff, because we've talked about it. I don't think they were coached very well as far as game plan and schemes. When you watch the all 22 over the last month of the season, they just stopped the run and they scored when they needed to at the end of games. They weren't winning by dominating games. They weren't winning by 10, 14, 20 points comfortably. The margin of error is very small, but they did find a way to do it down the stretch.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to all of your points, when you look at how they were doing it and what they were doing, it was really gritty, and it was really effort based. They had a lot of, like you said, about the red zone opportunities. The other things was keeping the offense on the field. They went through a stretch about a month where they were only getting 1 to 2 first downs on third down conversions a game, and you just absolutely cannot continue to operate like that. You can't operate with your quarterback throwing out a deficiency of interceptions and fumbles to touchdowns. I mean, that's not winning football. You all the overtime games be damned. If you look at all of those games, they had opportunities to put those games away that they blew. And it's very easy when you look at the Raiders to think, okay, we have this. Yeah, it looked good. Said it was a coin flip. It could have gone either way. And in a way, it kind of looks exactly like it mirrored 2016. And so they have this opportunity to get it right and do it right this time, and not make the same mistakes that they made. And to me, the number one way to start with that is it's time to move on from your quarterback. After 8 years and finally getting to the playoffs, your quarterback showed you that he is the exact same guy that he's been all season long, and is going to continue to be that same guy. There's not going to be a magic coach that's going to come in and get him to suddenly be somebody other than who he is.
Interesting. Phil, are you with us?
Yeah, sorry about that, you guys.
So we were just doing a review, like a review of the season. Like, what are your thoughts about the season in review?
You look at how everything played out. You look at how, this is the first time in a long time since we've seen a defense end up finishing within the top 15. You look at the offense, but the one thing that's always still been the problem about this offense was you couldn't get it done in the red zone. You still kept having things that was already being discussed during like the off season. Oh yeah, we're gonna fix our red zone problem. We're gonna fix the red zone problem, but through week after week after week after week, we kept seeing the same thing. You're going 3 and out, and you're settling for a field goal. I mean, you probably saw for the first 3 weeks, like, okay, they got something going in the red zone, but the problem was you couldn't get it done in all 4 quarters. It was just hit or miss. When you look at how things played out, I mean, your offense is one of the things that really played a problem to everybody else. And when I mean everybody else, I mean, the defense. I mean, the defense, everybody likes to jump and say that, well, they gave up touchdowns and they gave this touchdown up. But again, when your offense is not scoring on your first half, and they're constantly having a turnover on down, or they didn't turn the ball over, you're putting your defense back against the wall. And that was one of the main problems why you kept having your defense giving up so many points within the red zone area, because short field you had to deal with.
Yeah, Ryan, you talked about GM choices in the future. In the past, who are some of the guys who you would like to see the Raiders go after? I think everybody is probably co-signing on the one guy who they asked permission from the Colts today from right.
Yeah, Ed Dodds was on my top 5 list. He's a former Raiders intern. He got a start in pro football with the Raiders. Indianapolis has a great roster. They've hit on a ton of draft picks. They hit on free agents. He's been the right-hand man there for Chris Ballard. So, Ed Dodds obviously would be number 1 on my choice or list. Now that Will McClay, who was number 1, the Cowboys ponied up the money to keep him. So you go him. I still like Joe Horitz out of Baltimore. He's been the director of pro scouting there for a long time. Joe Schoen's getting interviews. He's another guy I highlighted on podcasts with Buffalo. So there are some names going around. I'd expect, Louis Riddick is a hot name. I'd expect them to speak to him if possible. I would love Dodds. If they could somehow, he actually was with the Raiders when Harbaugh was there as well. So they coached together, or they were on the same staff in 2003. So there is a mini connection there. But yeah, I think, obviously they need to figure out the GM. I think this is more of, it feels like Harbaugh is coming and they're trying to find someone that can work with him. I'd be surprised if they hired a GM and then all of a sudden the Harbaugh rumors went away. So we'll see what happens. It doesn't mean he's coming. He could change his mind until he signs a contract. Nothing's done. But It's feeling like that. Hopefully we hear an announcement here by Friday, I would think, by the end of the week, and get this going. But I did want to mention something. I watched the all 22 of the Bengals game, and I thought it was a really great game plan by their defense. If you noticed, Hunter Foster Moreau kept having trouble with that sift block where he comes across the field to block the unblocked defensive end, like, because that's what they like to do on an inside zone, on split zone. The Bengals kept blitzing off the weak side of the formation, the guy that is supposed to be blocked by that tight end coming across, and he couldn't get there like 4 or 5 times. And that's the first time I've seen a team do that. And that just blew up a couple of the play action shots and then the runs in those situations. So I thought it was a great job. The Raiders never really adjusted to that wrinkle. And I've talked about the design of the offense. I haven't liked it the whole season. Clearly, I'm excited to hopefully study a new offense where they actually use outside wide receivers and they run slants and they run outs and they run comebacks and they fit their strengths. And they don't say Zay Jones and Brian Edwards run vertical and be alert routes. And let's just clear out everything for underneath, because what you saw defenses doing, and they were doing it. There was plays where Darren Waller was triple covered last week against Cincinnati. We can run all these cute option routes you want, but the minute you bracket them, they're no longer available. Now you have receivers running downfield when that's not their strong suit. So I'm ready for slants. I'm ready for a new offense. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, no question about that. Robinson, what do you think? What are your thoughts about the GM search? And is there a couple of names that you like?
I hadn't heard about. I wasn't familiar with Eric Dodds. The names that I've heard between Dave Ziegler and Ed Dodds have been phenomenal candidates to look up. And I'm just excited that for once that we're looking at guys who have a proven track record, who have earned respect throughout leagues and organizations. Ziegler was Bill Belichick created a position to give him under Nick Caserio so that he wouldn't leave to go back to Denver. Literally created a position just for him underneath the GM job, which is now what he's being interviewed for. Dodds is a disciple of Al, probably one of the last remaining branches of the Al Davis tree that have enjoyed success. And when you look at the history, because the Raiders don't do anything without Raider history behind it, but he built the Legion of Boom. He built the Super Bowl contender in Seattle. Then he went to the Colts and got the Colts to the level of where they're at right now with the defense that they put together. And the most remarkable thing about it is that he's done it with mid to late round draft picks and not early rounders. And so when you look at now to another little aspect and wrinkle is when you look at the salary cap in 2022, the Raiders have a ton of players that they need to re-sign. A lot of those players don't need to be re-signed. What they really need to do is hit on these draft picks, because the best draft pick they made in the draft this year was Nate Hobbs. Nate Hobbs is ranked, PFF has him ranked 7 out of 121 corners. And he is the third best, has the third highest player grade on the team.
I mean, I think Diablo has a chance to be good too. And just to kind of piggyback that, we've talked about that. I don't think the casual fan understands the lack of cheap labor that's on this roster, because they're all like basically free agents because of all the missed draft picks over the last 4 or 5 years. It's really going to rear its head in the next year or two. And I asked a hypothetical question, like I knew the answer to it, and then it blew up yesterday about how are they going to re-sign it. But you can't just go out and fill every hole with a $5 to $8 million free agent. They just don't have that room. And the contracts that Mayock put together for Littleton and Nassib and Kwiatkowski, those are albatrosses right now hanging around their neck. They can't walk away from them. You can designate them June 1 cuts if you want. You get 2 of them, but you can't use that money till June. So all the players won't be available anyways if you designate them as June 1, and all that money goes into the 2023 cap. So they're gonna have a lot of dead money to create very little extra cap space this year, which means, again, you go back to the draft. And then in my hypothetical, I had them giving up, multiple picks for Devontae Adams, and I know that he's not a free agent. I know he's going to get franchised. But then you don't have draft picks to fill those holes. So now you're basically running it back with little additions to the roster. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the new GM and the new head coach and the direction that they go, because this thing could go any one of a million different ways regarding the players on this team. If Gus Bradley's gone, what happens to half the defense? Do you re-sign Casey Hayward? Do you bring back some of these Gus pieces that might not fit a new scheme? Maybe they're running a different scheme. So it's going to be intriguing. I love the offseason. This is my favorite part, because the Raiders not made the playoffs a lot in my lifetime. So I've always been on the player development side and the free agents and the acquisitions. I get excited this time of year. I'm ready for the draft. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, Phil Jones, your thoughts about the GM and the GM search and Mayock being gone?
Well, my thoughts right away are this needed to happen.
Yeah.
Mike Mayock, you look at the whole situation where he was in.
I think we lost you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Part of it looks like, oh, hey, he is your GM, and then the other half is like, is he really making the picks? Is he making all of them? Or is, in some cases, which one are his? And then you looked at it, I was just like, that's not a Gruden pick right there. And then when you hear him talk, it was just like, this ain't gonna work out. It's not gonna work out with Mike Mayock. I know a lot of people want to try to give him some props with some of the things he said over the years, but then I also look back and say, he hasn't always hit on any of the picks when he was doing it with what was it, Path to the Draft and all. But when he was a GM for this,
network.
Yeah, when he had when he really worked on that 2020 draft, look how much we lost versus what we've gained. Yeah. And then I look at this year, how much have we gained? I mean, yes, you got Devon Diablo, you have Nate Hobbs, that's great, but this is not. Yeah, you're gonna go out the door. I also think a part of it with being a part with John Gruden and all. I mean, not with his stuff, but just you got to get rid of it. I mean, he's not the guy. But if you're going to get a guy for GM, I mean, here's my list. I like Omar Khan from out of Pittsburgh. I like the work that he's done within the front office. He understands the finances. With the folks that he's been able to help pick, TJ Watt, you see what he's doing. That was a big move. You look at what's the wide receiver name? Johnson. Look at how much he had input on trying to get Najee Harris. And you can also look at with Vincent Newsom from Baltimore. He's been lingering around with the Ravens for a long time with the player personnel, and I'm just like, why hasn't this man hasn't been promoted? Like, let's be real here. This man has been around since Ozzie Newsome was there.
Yeah.
Played key factors in a lot of stuff. And then, you said Dodds, and I was like, this man was literally with us back with the Raiders with Jim Harbaugh. And as Phil said, the man has done it big. And I wouldn't mind if we get him. I wouldn't mind having him.
No, I think he'd be. I think he's the choice. He's probably the front runner that Raider Nation will love to see become the next GM, because that might connect the dots to having Jim Harbaugh here. Is there anybody going around real quick? Anybody who would, as far as head coach goes, let's just say it falls apart with Harbaugh. Any guys who you're worried about? Does a Brian Dable worry you? There's a Matt Eberflus, Nathaniel Hackett, Josh McDaniels. These are names that I'm hearing. People trying to connect to the Raiders. I don't see. I mean, I don't see Brian Dable. I'm just worried about the fact that he's with if you watch the game against the Patriots, Ryan, he looked that quarterback looked pretty crazy. So he won't have that if he comes here. So
yeah, I think one other Mayock point that gets overlooked is people forget that he was there in 2018. So think about all the bad free agent contracts he's brought on. He was there for LaMarcus Joyner, Trent Brown. He was there for Corey Littleton, Kwiatkowski,
LaMarcus Joyner. Oh my God.
Malik Collins, Tyrell Williams. Like, why does he get a pass for all the terrible free agents? And every guy this year,
you got a good point.
It was all
We
Gruden.
don't talk about that.
It was all Gruden. I thought you knew.
Do we know that though?
Now it's all Gruden
think
because
on
Gruden
that-
can't talk.
Yeah,
So-
you let Twitter tell it. It was all Gruden. And Gruden is the
Yeah.
only person that did anything. The rest of those guys were all cheap, or were all cheap labor who did nothing but sit around and collect checks.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think on the head coaching thing, if it's not Harbaugh, I think, I turn back to Doug Peterson. I still think, he should get another chance here. I like Byron Leftwich a lot. I think, I've always talked about staying on the offensive side because I think it's harder to replace that once you get it going. So if you bring in a defensive coach, the offense takes off and you lose your coordinator, it's hard to replicate that. We saw what happened when Bill Musgrave left and when Todd Downing took over. You don't want that. So I would go Doug Peterson. I'd love to see Byron Leftwich. I know what the Cowboys did. I'd still talk to Kellen Moore. I like Todd Bowles. I think he should get another chance if you want to go defense. He had Ryan Fitzpatrick and Sam Darnold and Josh McCown with the Jets. Let's not forget who his quarterbacks were there. He didn't pick those guys. And Brian Flores, to me, I like Brian Flores. My only concern is this. He's had 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years. That offense has been putrid. He can't get any continuity going there. And then that scheme they run, that cover 0, heavy blitz, mug look, the Raiders don't have any corners other than maybe Mullen and maybe Hobbs. We don't know if Hobbs can play man coverage because he didn't do it in Bradley's scheme. Like, you may need 2 or 3 cornerbacks just to run that system. So it's not like he's going to come in and run that system year 1 and have a ton of success. So I like him. I just don't see the fit with the Raiders with the personnel they have on this team for Flores.
Robinson, what are your thoughts about if it's not Harbaugh, who do you like?
If it's not Harbaugh, I've been of the mind that they should have hired Bieniemy a couple years ago. I think that at some point you got to start poaching away from the Kansas City tree, from what Andy Reid is doing over there, because they're just sitting there just stacking up championship after championship within the division and the conference. He's led an incredible offense. He's developed a quarterback. He's run with an old guy, and then they changed it up. And to me, that would be the first place that I started, because you can do a couple things there. Byron Leftwich was also my guy. As much as I loved Brian Dabble, there were some things about his scheme that I did not like. I don't like the fact that the running game has come alive this year, but last year's running game was non-existent. It was almost like, if it wasn't Josh Allen running the football, Devin Singleton wasn't getting anything. And so those would probably be my 3 choices. Looking at the way the Raiders played and got to the playoffs, I think that sticking with that particular brand of football is probably going to be what's best, especially since it's what they have readily available on the roster.
Yeah. Jones, what you got?
If it ain't Jim Harbaugh, I'm looking at Byron Leftwich. I'm also keeping an eye out on Eric Bieniemy. Look, and like Robinson said, he should have had a head coaching job a long time ago, and we should be trying to poach from Kansas City. They've had nothing but success, and this guy, I got a chance to speak to him during the Super Bowl. He's a leader of men. This man knows how to rally a team together. He knows how to keep guys fired up even when they're down. And that's what you need. He knows how to speak to people. You look at how he's been able to make the play calling in Andy Reid's offense. And I know there's been folks that have been running around saying that, it's not Eric Bieniemy calling this or that. Actually, it is. He's making you literally watch him like, this man's literally calling in the plays right now. It's a pass play. It's a run play. I'm literally watching this man's lip move. So how can you say that he's not doing it? The man is doing an excellent job, and he deserves it. He actually deserves a head coaching gig. And I get tired of other folks trying to bring up his past, and it's irrelevant now. The man has dealt with it. It's been back in the late 90s?
Yeah.
We're now how many years have gone by? Look, 30, we need to get past 40.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Now you also look at
Go ahead.
Brian Flores. Now you said with Brian Flores running that man coverage, would Nate Hobbs be a
I lost you a little bit.
So what I'm guessing he was getting ready to say was in terms of man coverage that Nate Hobbs did a lot of that at Illinois under Lovie Smith.
scale to 1 to 10? I give him about like a 7, about a 6.5 on it.
Yeah.
So it's something we can look at.
Yeah, I think Flores is right now. I think and Ryan and I talked about this his last our last podcast. Like he can't get it wrong because this will be his last job in the NFL, being a head coach at least. You don't get 3 opportunities unless you got rings on your fingers or something like that. It's very difficult to get a third job. I think Leftwich, I just like the whole thing with. He just looks like a leader. I think he has great input, and I do like the year that he had with Winston before, even though it's 30 picks is 30 picks. I'm not going to sit there, but they were explosive offensively in his system. As far as Eric B goes, I do like the creativity. They always give you something new in the red zone when they're there. I mean, they're really, if they weren't in our division, I'd be like one of my favorite watches. It's like painful to watch them in the red zone because they're so creative. But whether it's a shovel pass, whether it's a throw into the man eligible, they do a good job of kind of creating a lot of different matchups here. And it's funny, we have Waller and we don't throw the ball in the end zone, but like every time I watch the Chiefs play, Ryan, it seems like Kelsey's by himself in the end zone all the time and it's a touchdown.
Yeah.
In the red zone.
And we hear a lot of people say, well, they need to run the ball in the red zone to be better, which is true, but Kansas City doesn't run the ball in the red zone, and all they do is score touchdowns. So you can do it. It is possible to cross the goal line without running it. Yeah, I mean, they're really creative. It's like Travis Kelce threw a touchdown. Darius Poe threw a touchdown.
Yes, I know. I remember that.
He had a defensive tackle throw a touchdown.
I remember
the shovel passes, the misdirection, all that stuff that's going on. The Raiders don't do any of that. If they're going to run the ball, they're just going to line up and run, inside zone weak, split zone. They're going to run curl flat. I don't even get started on those last 4 plays of the game last week, but there's just no creativity there. So whoever it is, if it's a defensive coach, they better have a creative offensive coordinator because it's 2022 and this league is set up for offensive success and you need to score points.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about that? Let me skip around and talk about that last drive. How do you? And this is the moment where like I knew that they weren't bringing back the Bisaccia anyway, but like how do you hear a play call where nobody's going to be the players are not going to be in the end zone, and you let that go through as the play call for that for the last play of the game?
I think how can Bisaccia stood up there today and said there was a miscommunication? We shouldn't have spiked the ball. But yeah, we all knew that when we were watching the TV. Yes. I was yelling, "Do not spike the ball."
Yes, you need 4 chances.
Down right there.
Yeah, you need 4 chances.
How does that happen? How does Greg Olsen not talk to the quarterback? How do they tell him run a play like that? That's mind-boggling that they weren't prepared for that situation, knowing what they were going up against. But I'll defer. I'll let you guys answer the play calls there on the final 4 plays.
Well, you brought up something good. Like, how is he not communicating with his quarterback, or is your quarterback ignoring him? I'm just saying.
I don't think I don't think they're yelling in the headset, "Don't spike it." He just runs up there and spikes it. I just don't think they were prepared for that moment.
No, what I'm saying, but it's like this has been times where
get to the line and run something in that situation.
Like there's been a communication problem between the two for a minute now. I mean, at first I was like, maybe he's hearing Gruden and Olsen in his ear. But now it's just Olsen. So why are you? There should be no disconnect. There shouldn't be no problems. That should have got through right away. But yes, it's just spiking it on first and goal. Yeah. You had plenty of time, and this is the one thing that got me. You had something going with the running game. Even if you had this clock running, they were winded. It's cold out there. They couldn't stop Josh Jacobs. Why didn't you just say, F it? Let's try to pull a quick draw right up the middle see what we can get out of it real quick.
Mm.
Because you don't got to go that far.
Yeah.
Everybody get back at the line of scrimmage, run something quick, probably run something to Waller, run like a little zig for a run throw. If it's incomplete, you got still time on the clock.
The clock management was not the best in that moment at all. The elephant in the room is always going to be number 4. I think the way I look at the whole situation is, and I kind of came to this in my head when I was watching the Niners play the Cowboys, and I think that's the best way to play with him at quarterback is pass rush, running game, and then take it from there, play action, all those things like that. I think that's probably the best way to try to play with him. It's gonna be new. Everything's gonna be new coming up this year. If he's back, I think he will be back. I know some folks don't think he will be back, but I think he will be back this year in 22. Ryan, let you go first. Well, what are your thoughts about the Carr new coach? And then we've seen Harbaugh in action. If it is Harbaugh, we've seen Harbaugh in action. How does he fit in that system with Jim?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm open-minded. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. If he comes back, fine. If he doesn't, fine. Like, I'm not solely planted in either camp.
Yeah,
it's been 8 years. I know what he is at this point. Can you win with him with the right pieces around him? I think so. Is he ever going to be good enough to carry you deep into the playoffs without a very strong supporting cast? No, I don't think he is. But I think I think you're right. I think they need to run the ball. They need to do play action. Then I don't know why they don't bootleg with him and get him outside, kind of like Garoppolo does. Garoppolo's not a better athlete than Derek Carr, so I don't know why they've never done that in 8 years. But I think I'd say it's 80%. I think he's coming back. Do I think they should give him a 5-year extension at $35 million with 80 guaranteed? No, I'm firmly in that if you bring him back, hopefully he plays on that last year of that deal. That's on himself. You can always franchise him after that too.
Question: is there anything they can do in kind of bridge the gap between a long-term deal and something where he gets a little bit more guaranteed money? Because that was the biggest thing on Twitter today, is like he's not playing for that contract, and I'm like, well, Sean Gilbert's the only guy I remember sitting out an entire year, on a contract dispute. I mean, he's gonna, if the Raiders say that he's the quarterback and they're not gonna budge on the money, he's gonna show up, right?
Well, clearly right now the leverage is in his camp. So if you bring in a new coach, he's going to say, I want a new deal. I think what happens is it's going to look really bad for this organization if they go out and hire a new coach and he pulls a Khalil Mack and he just says, you know what, I'm not showing up to camp. And then is he going to play? I think ultimately he would, but it's going to look bad when you bring in a new coach and then he misses part of camp or most of camp. And I know a lot of people are saying he's going to take a below market deal. I don't see an agent allowing him to do that. It's going to be 33, 35 million, somewhere in that. I don't think he takes a 2-3-year deal. I see a lot of people saying, well, he's going to take a team-friendly 2-year deal. You can backload the deal. You can't backload quarterback deals that have $80 to $100 million guaranteed on over 5 years. You're taking a $20 million cap hit no matter what. When you do the math on it's math. Like he's not going to play for $35 million a year with a $2 million cap hit. It's impossible to do that. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, cooler heads prevail. If the new coach comes in and Derek starts fighting him, January, later this month, early February for a new deal, then move on from him. It doesn't matter to me. I'm a Raiders fan. I'm not a Derek Carr fan. I'll be a fan of whoever the quarterback is. I've been doing this for 43 years. I said for a long time. Very bad quarterback play. And the whole argument, well, he's the best guy since Gadden. I don't care. I was here before Gadden. I just want to win. I don't care who the quarterback is. So that's just kind of how I feel on the subject.
So you down for Uncle Rico, right?
If they win, I don't care who the quarterback is.
I don't care.
We're gonna call up Uncle Rico.
He gonna football over those mountains.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts about Carr coming back next year? Phil Jones.
I'm about the same with Ryan. We know where he is. We know the kind of quarterback we're gonna get. Now, everybody says we put more pieces around him. See,
been saying that though.
That's
you said that for 8 years.
And you heard the space that Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cycle. We keep saying, well, if we give them a little bit of this, we give them a little bit of this, we give them a little. It's like a broken record. And I don't know if you try to put all your marbles. People run around on Twitter and say, oh, and all these crazy websites saying that, oh, the Raiders need to go on and put all the marbles in and try to get Devontae Adams. Where you need to use your money correctly and address other positions that are hurting. Like, your left guard position is terrible right now. Your right tackle position, terrible. You can't focus all in on one guy just to help this one quarterback. Then you also gonna say we gonna need this, 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 and this, and then we fall short again because, like Ryan said, we're not going to make it like further than that from what we've seen with Carr. So my whole thing is, if you stick with them, you know what's going to happen. But if you move on from them, well, you got to be ready to venture into that part.
Yeah.
If you can't find somebody that you think is good or decent enough to get the job done, then yeah, you're gonna end up most likely stuck with them. Or, you say, F it, let's go on and make a draft. It's a guy from Ole Miss that could possibly get it done. And there's another guy, Liberty? Mr. Willis? Malik Willis?
Mm-hmm.
I think we should keep an eye on him.
Whether they keep Carr or not, I mean, they have to start drafting quarterbacks. I mean, you can't. Or Phil Robinson, what are your thoughts about Carr playing on that deal, not playing on that deal, or Raiders just deciding to say, hey, we're gonna move on?
So I think the point of contention that comes up more than anything is the money and the no trade clause that he's going to absolutely demand to have. He's been a topic of trade conversations almost every year after 2016, and it's definitely not going to quiet down this offseason. And whether we keep him, I think if you're going to keep him, you need to figure out a way to spread the field and adopt more of a shotgun spread. That seems to be the offense that he likes to use when he puts up big numbers. In terms of play action and whatnot, he's not really a quarterback that likes to operate with his back to the line of scrimmage. He's kind of jittery with that, and so I would stay away from it. If you want to move forward, like I said earlier, you can do at this point with how the defense played coming down the stretch and where your run game is with this offensive line. You can use that as your way of your offense moving forward and continue to build on the offensive line, draft you a fast guy, a fast receiver, and work to bring somebody along or use the good old Fresno State stopgap quarterback routine to get you through and hold the fort while your running game and defense does all the heavy lifting.
Yeah. Let's see here. So as far as like people who we want back, like, I mean, it's hard to kind of say who we want back because of we gotta see who's the coach and what kind of style they want. The whole list is like pretty long as far as that goes, but you're talking about Zay Jones, people like that, Deshaun Jackson, Carrier Bowers, people like that. Is there anybody who is a free agent this year who you want to definitely try to have come back? It's hard to do it without the head coach, though. I understand that part.
Yeah, I think I'm in I don't want Deshaun Jackson back camp. I just don't think he did enough for the time he was there. I love Deshaun Jackson. I like him his whole career. I just think at this point in his career, he didn't show me anything other than the Cowboys game, and that was 3 catches. So I think I'd rather, take a younger receiver, develop another guy in that position. Offensively, there's not a lot of free agents. I think, it shifts to the defensive side. And if Gus Bradley, let's just assume he does return, which at this point it looks unlikely. You absolutely have to do whatever you can to keep Casey Hayward around. I think he had a really good year. You need to keep, Solomon Thomas, Jefferson, those guys on the interior. I think defensive tackle, people overlooking, I think that's one of the biggest needs on this team. Every one of those guys is a free agent. which is kind of why I posed that question. Like, if you get Adams, you give up draft capital, he's going to want $25 million a year. If you extend Carr, that $40 million cap space disappears quickly. You don't have a defensive tackle on this roster, let alone depth.
Hankins,
you don't have any outside corners.
Yeah, Hankins, Jefferson, Solomon Thomas, Philon, and McCoy are all free agents. Like, that's the whole of them.
So
all of them.
To me, like, I think the biggest needs going into the draft, we can talk about right tackle. I don't want a rookie right tackle. I want a veteran right tackle.
Yep.
I'm not putting Alex Leatherwood next to a rookie.
Nope.
I think the biggest needs are defensive tackle and cornerback, but that's my opinion.
Yeah. No, you gotta do that. Go ahead, Phil.
No, I would say so. Looking at it now, it's funny because you go through PFF and they got some interesting grades on our defensive linemen. In terms of overall grades, the grades are pretty low. They're graded pass rushing, but the run defense was a terrible grade, which I don't really understand because at the end of the season, there wasn't a whole lot of teams that were running all over the place on them. As much as I want to say you got to bring Casey Hayward back, he's going to be 34 years old next year, or at some point during the season, he will be 34 years old. And he was, if you bring Bradley back and run it in Ron Miles's system with him as the coach, then maybe he can squeeze out another year. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the cap. They have what did I put down? 15 defensive free agents that accounted for 25.36 million against the cap this season. If you want to bring back your defensive line, you got 4 to 5 guys that you got to bring back there. And if you bring them back, all of them deserve raises from what they got. And you're gonna run out of money quick. The 40 million is it seems like a lot, but it's not going to be. So that's kind of why I was like, well, maybe you do have to keep Carr, because if you replace Carr with a better quarterback, you're gonna have to spend way more than $19 million on your quarterback.
Yeah,
I think, and I kind of touched on this yesterday too. The cap is a myth. Let's just get it out there. But this is a cash league. You can do whatever you want with a cap if your owner has deep pockets. You can backload contracts. You want to sign guys to big deals and spread it out. You know what happens when you sign a signing bonus? Let's just say Derek Carr gets an $80 million signing bonus. Mark Davis has to write an $80 million check and put it in an escrow account.
Yep.
Go get Devontae Adams. He's got to put a $60 million check. That's $140 million in an escrow account. I know he's in Vegas, but we had the pandemic last year. Is Mark Davis going to dip into his pockets? Does he have $250 million in cash lying around? We're not even talking about paying off the old coaching staff, the new coaching staff. So I'm sure he can do it, but fans don't understand that, like, to maneuver the cap, to release guys, to create dead money, to extend guys, you have to have cash. You can't just do it. It's not fantasy football. So Mark Davis is the one that's going to have to write every one of those checks this offseason. It is doable. It is possible. You can work around the cap if you want to. How much does he want to? That's my question.
Yeah. Jones.
Oh man, yeah, you gotta, your D tackles, like you gotta bring them back, and that's a big hole right there. And that was something that we noticed early on in the run defense. But you started having Darius Philon, Solomon Thomas step up. Those are two guys that you definitely got to bring back if you can't get Jefferson back on a new deal. But like, that's a lot of holes, man. I'm just really thinking about that right now.
Yeah, it's a lot. But I mean, like, we'll have to see what happens as far as that goes on. Jared Mayo is a guy who's going to be interviewing with the Raiders. Is that looks like? Is that what looks like? What we think it is, or do we actually?
You know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on and put it in bold letters. Just put a stamp on it and just
At least it's not Hines Ward like the Texans did.
Yeah, I wasn't with the Hines Ward one threw me for a loop. That Hines Ward got I got that.
It's not T. Martin, so at least they're interviewing someone that is somewhat of a candidate. It's not like other teams are doing.
Right. That's crazy. Anything else you guys want to kind of roll through before we kind of head out? Thank you. I want to thank y'all guys for joining us here on the Put on Raiders podcast. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'm trying to think. Phil.
I think I'd like to, the fifth-year options are going to come up.
Yes.
Clearly,
Good
for everyone that's
Good
telling me
point.
just release Farrell, Farrell has a $10 million cap hit next year. He's not going anywhere. He's
No,
going to be
he's
on
not.
this roster for a lot of money.
Yep.
I'm in the camp on Josh Jacobs. I probably would at this point if they have enough cap room, and then try to work out a longer-term deal at a lower number.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep him long term at $10 million a year. Go look at that Zeke Elliott contract. I saw it on Twitter today. I was like, my jaw dropped. It's like $17 million a year for like 5 more years. They can't get out of that. Abram, I would not. I like Abram for what he is. He can't cover, and
At
it
all.
really restricts what if Bradley comes back. It really restricts what he can do. They can't move guys. Right? You saw Trayvon Merrick moving around, playing more man. Like the minute Abrams off the field, we started to see Merrick doing all kinds of stuff that he wasn't doing when Abram was on this team. So I love the passion. I love that he wants to be a Raider. I love everything about him. I just don't think he's very good at football for what he needs to do in today's game. He would have been great 10, 15 years ago, but it's 2022. So I'd let him play out one more year and walk. I wouldn't be surprised even if a new coach comes in that he's not a starter next year. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Gillespie we didn't even get a chance to see much of him this year. You saw a lot of Teamer and Levitt, so you didn't even get a chance to see the other safety a lot at all, even when Abram went down.
Another thing I wouldn't mind, Malcolm. We got to see more of Malcolm Kuntz. We're gonna have to really see him because I don't want that. I don't want him just going to waste. Everybody's saying like, well, we got Max. Well, we got Yannick. I'm like, that's true and all.
Yeah.
Look, you need to get him out there. I'm gonna be real. You having Max out there for about what 89% of the snaps, or
he clocked
more?
over 900 total snaps this season.
That's gonna catch up on you. For your age, the body, it's going to catch up with you. These guys are not built like the guys back in the day. And I'm starting to notice one thing with Max, when it comes to run defense, it's like Jekyll and Hyde with him. And more teams are really going to start paying attention to him like, oh, that's all we got to do to just get rid of him. The one thing I will say about Malcolm Kuntz and run support, he knows how to contain his area. He knows how to stay home if it's going to be like an outside run, but I haven't seen him get engulfed. And I had to go back and look at some of Buffalo's tape, and then I had to look at a few of the preseason games. I didn't see him get engulfed in any of the when it came to runs. So one thing I will say, he just needs to just bulk up a little bit more. But this could be a guy that we need to make sure we have locked in. He's shown flashes. I think we need to give him more of an opportunity, like how we were doing with Devon Diablo.
I think to your point, Phil, this Fangio, if he comes, I've had a lot of people say, well, we don't have the personnel to run 3-4. I disagree completely. I think Malcolm Kuntz can play in a 3-4. I think Max Crosby can play in a 3-4 as an outside linebacker. These people think that 3-4 outside linebackers are in coverage 60% of the time. They're not. And the minute you go to nickel, you take the nose out, and those both outside guys become edge rushers. They have to contain the run. So my concern with Yannick is Yannick's not going to be able to play full time as an outside backer in a 3-4, but in the nickel he can because he doesn't have run responsibilities. He's going to be going after the quarterback. So you'd have to maybe put Kuntz in that position or rotate him a lot. But Denzel Perryman can. He's played in the 3-4. Diablo can. If you resign Hankins, you have a nose. You draft another one. The big bodies, Damian. You don't need pass rushers in a 3-4 to play in. You put Damian Square there. You put big bodies to eat up blocks. Phylon can do it. They have the pieces to play in the front. Abram can't. In my opinion, he can't because the starting safety in a 3-4 is not. He's deep. He's not up in the box. I don't want him in coverage. He's not a linebacker. Can we stop talking about Jonathan Abram as a linebacker? The guy weighs 205 pounds.
Yeah.
He is not a linebacker. I know he makes run stops, but if you put him up there full time, he's going to get his butt kicked in the NFL. So I'm tired of that conversation on Twitter. But I do think they could play a 3-4. You know, they have the pieces. You add one or two guys to come in. I'm a big fan of 3-4s. I love that you don't know where the blitz is coming from. You can bring it from any one of those four backers. You can drop them out. Can Max Crosby play in coverage? He dropped out this year. I saw him do it 5 or 6 times. He looked fine. What's the difference between TJ Watt and Max Crosby athletically? Because I don't think there's a big difference. If TJ Watt can do it, why can't Max Crosby do it? Max Crosby runs like a 4.6. So, I mean, he can run too. So you don't want him to do it. And TJ Watt, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm guessing he rushed the passer over 90% of the time. So this whole thought from Raider Nation is we can't go to a 3-4 is completely false, in my opinion.
I think people just try to go off of Madden, or they see a
PFF
and be like, oh, I know he can't play that spot. I mean, have you watched a full entire game of what this guy can do? And what's funny with some of the 3-man fronts that we ran in that nickel package, I mean, we had some guys standing up. We had some guys, having no problems at all. What's funny, I can't believe I'm literally saying this, but Farrell was okay in a 3-man front.
Better suited to it as a 5 and a 7.
I feel like Hell just froze after I just said that.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember Rob Ryan running Tyler Brayton out as a 3-4 backer. He ran out Grant Irons as a 3-4 backer. So don't tell me Max Crosby can't do it.
Yeah.
Not that those guys are good at it, but you can do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
I was looking Brayton started looking all right for a minute, and then it just went.
All right, folks. Listen, it's the Raiders made the playoffs this year, but there's a whole lot of questions with this team going forward. So we have to kind of wait and see. Hopefully, in the coming weeks or coming week, we can see some movement on the general manager. Hopefully, the dots connecting Dobbs to Harbaugh come to fruition, but we'll have to see about that. I want to thank Phil Jones, Phil Robinson for joining us on the Put On Raiders podcast. You can catch their podcast, The Unfiltered Truth, on YouTube and everywhere else, gentlemen. And Ryan, of course, thank you for joining us here. Anything else in parting before we head out? Did I miss anything?
I just wanted to say thank you for having us on the show. We are out here trying to do our thing, trying to get some subscribers to our YouTube channel. We are close to 1,000. We got some things lined up coming up. We have the Senior Bowl in a couple of weeks that Jones is going to be attending. And so we're going to have a lot of live coverage from Mobile while that's going on. And that's pretty much all I got. I'm doing my writing thing at Raider Ramble. I got
You froze
going
up.
over some of the free agents that we should keep. Oh, did I?
Yeah. You froze for a second.
Yeah, go ahead. You said free agents.
Oh, yeah, that free agents that they need to bring back and on offense and defense. And so that's pretty much what I got coming up in the near future.
Cool. For me, ATB Network, and then Sports Time HQ. I'm doing some stuff on writing some writing there. You can catch Ryan on our podcast and on the Full Press Raiders as well. And then also he has his breakdowns there. The draft is around the corner. I know Phil is probably, getting ready to go to Mobile at some point. That should be fun as well. So we'll see what happens there. So yeah, listen, guys, thanks for joining. And listen, I'm happy. I don't want to forget MLK Day. So MLK represent. Happy for that. If you're gonna put the quotes on social media, just live your life that way. That's all I gotta say about that part. A lot of people putting quotes on social media about my MLK. Live the life the same way, if you will. All right, folks. See you next time.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay.